Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. We've covered many different topics through the channelings of Quo. Quo is described as a principle or a collection of social memory complexes or group of higher density entities that are channeling through a group called LL Research that teach about a variety of amazing spiritual topics. We've covered a variety of things, and today we're going to talk about money and wealth through some questions asked and some channelings. Quo is quite different than other channeled entities. It doesn't really talk about abundance or wealth as often as, for instance, Abraham or Bashar or others. But there is locked within some of these some powerful suggestions and ideas and understandings of how to relate to wealth on the spiritual path. We begin with a channeling delivered on September 12th, 1993. The question this afternoon has to do with the effect our constant pursuit of having enough money to survive and pay our bills causes in our spiritual seeking. We were wondering if that basic attitude of our working from 9 to 5 for most of the days of the week has an effect on our spiritual seeking, and we were wondering if there was another attitude that would have a more beneficial effect, keeping in mind that, well, I'll suggest that the Egyptians began some of their difficulties with disease and famine when they changed from the barter system and the common ownership of all things to private property and the institution of a monetary system. So we would like to know what the effect of our monetary pursuits have on our spiritual seeking, and if there is an alternative attitude that may be more beneficial. I am Quo. Greetings in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. We are blessed to be called to your group this day. The sun streams into the domicile in which you sit, touching this channel's body with warmth, and we feel the metaphysical warmth of your welcoming to us. Thank you for this privilege. As always, we request that each entity use his personal discrimination in choosing those of our thoughts which may seem interesting to you. Leave others behind, please. You ask if your monetary system has an effect on the life of the spirit. We may start by saying that it is clear that your sphere has great feelings concerning this system whereby a symbol of wealth is used in order to purchase goods or services. The globe upon which you dwell has in some form a monetary system regardless of where, in which culture, or at what level you may look. Earlier, the one known as R was wondering if the brain was capable of giving good information, considering that its makeup is a portion of the delusion. The brain is quite effective at dealing with problems within the illusions. One of the problems it perceives is the need for a supply of your money, which not only shall cover the daily need, but shall also extend beyond that need to some possible future need for which there must be a supply which is more than enough for today. As your people's culture become more sophisticated, the perception of your biocomputer brain grows continually so that in the technically sophisticated culture which you now experience, there is the universal perception that whatever is being received is probably not enough, for there is not enough extra. We could encourage each to take the mind and lead it into a more wise configuration. However, the spiritual uses, we correct this instrument, the spiritual nature is not greatly linked with the biocomputer brain. The key then to a more elevated view of the relationship of money to the self is gained through the use of consciousness rather than the brain. To better gain access to a right relationship with money, it is well to place concerns about finances within the Holy of Holies, which lies within your deep mind. The consciousness of one is a consciousness of infinite plenty. The creation is full of all that there is. Every need has that which can meet the need. This consciousness of infinite supply sheds a welcome light upon the soul besieged by financial worries. To backtrack, please move in mind to that prayer which began this session. You asked for daily bread. The teacher known as Jesus recommended that prayer include the concern over money. That is, that there be enough for today. If entities worried only when there was not enough for this day, a great deal of worry would cease and hearts would calm and feel soothed. However, Though this is true, it is not definitively helpful because there is so much of world opinion which screams that enough for today is not at all a satisfactory end to concern. But what if you were to alter the term money and subsume it in the term energy? When the term energy is used, this may aid somewhat, for that which is energy does not need to be hoarded, but rather expresses its nature in its potentiation. Thusly, the general rule of thumb is that entities may do that which they must to gain enough energy to survive and be comfortable. This energy may be transmuted by those who see the spectrum of energies so that many things become money. And we feel sure that each can think of many instances where seemingly impossible things have occurred because of the trading of goods and services rather than the insistence upon some single form of energy. Why then do entities feel they must be concerned beyond today with money? For this is the place where concern over money does have a deep metaphysical result. That is, thinking and worrying about the future. Each is familiar with this habit of thinking. Is there enough to pay this and this and this? As each touches into this feeling, we suggest that each is gazing at a temporal being in fear that it may cease to exist, or that it may exist less comfortably. Even with those who amass great quantities of money, the motivation continues to be at heart based upon fear. Indeed, money is but one example of the way persons within your culture perceive energy. We said earlier that the word energy would help those who hoard money, for they see that the use of energy is in being used, consumed, or spent. But upon another level, those who have ambitions to gain power, for whatever reason, will amass as much extra power or energy as they can, there being no ceiling on the need for more. In your culture, there has been more and more unspoken assumption that there can never be too much energy, money, power, call it what you will, that there is literally no end to ambition or greed, all in the name of being more secure. Yet where is your security? In the bank which may fall, in the job which may cease, in the legal agreements which may be broken. Seek for that security, seek to amass energy saved against possible need, and feel the footsteps wander off the path. The solution each day is to reorient the way of perceiving on a conscious level when you see yourself turning to that grasping concern for more than enough. Say to the self, let go of fear. We realize we speak to those who must work long hours in order to pay for food and lodging and all necessities and desired objects. Yet we suggest that those who do not need to spend long hours working are still just as capable of losing sight completely of their true nature and of their true orientation with regard to plenty. If you must go to the place you would not wish to do a job you would not choose, yet still those who have no need but to please themselves spend at least as much of their time in fear. The question of supply is perhaps the deepest chasm of irrational concern which seduces your peoples. In the face of this, we simply suggest that as the healthy regard for money is in being sure of the daily bread, and then allowing concerns to fall away as appropriate, each simply move each day or each time he feels this concern into a conscious reorientation. Step back now and gaze at the illusion. Money is a perfect symbol for this entire illusion. It is a polarized concept. Not only is it more and less, but all and nothing. To the prudent, there is more money and less money. To the large majority, there is the state called I have money and the state called I don't have enough. It is all or nothing. Such is the radicalizing effect of fear. Your situation surrounds you and seemingly would be obvious to you. Yet it is carefully structured. That is, the illusion is carefully structured so that you do not catch on to the depth of illusion. We praise this illusion in which you struggle, even though the struggle is not necessary in terms of sheer metaphysics. Within third density, each of you came to struggle, came to be confused and befuddled, came to develop fears, to do all the wrong things, to clutch and grasp at everything from money to ideas, feeling needy. And why? Because it is in working with these honest feelings that the entity within you, the spirit, the consciousness, may float about the being with all these concerns and may interact with it in such a way that consciousness is transferred into the working brain, the working mind. Basically, your job here is to, within incarnation, begin to allow the programming of consciousness to replace the programming of your mind, which deals with the illusion in a polarized manner. See the concern for money as the challenge it is. What consciousness does to this concern is to lend it the awareness that there is enough, for consciousness is infinite. Celebrate your problems. They bring you to the point of desiring and seeking a higher truth. We encourage every discomfort of mind that leads you to seek and seek and seek again. This entity just thought to itself that it tends to seek and seek and seek again to have enough money to spend. Very well, that seeking too may provide material for an entire lifetime. However, there is an alternative to seeking within the illusion, that is simply seeking the consciousness and its infinite plentiness. Question. I guess the only thing I would say, it's not a question, is that in my mind anyway, the situation where you've got somebody who is spending most of his day at work and he gets really tired and he says, well, how can I have time to seek spiritually when I'm just wearying myself at work? I just don't feel that it's been addressed entirely, and I was wondering if you could go into that, because I see where it's consciousness. If we had a consciousness of plenty, we'd be a lot better off. And still, how do you find the time? I am Quo, and am aware of your query, my sister. The time as you experience it within your illusion is oftentimes lacking for the pursuit of the metaphysical foundation for that which occurs in your physical illusion. And too often, for those who labor from sunrise to sunset, there is no time to consider the meaning of the life that seems so hard and unyielding. It is for these entities that there is a primary purpose for the life that includes nothing other than dedication to a goal and honing the desire to survive. Not so much because this is of importance, but because the entity needs to focus its spiritual awareness upon a single concept, and perhaps at some point in this persistent practice, it will feel the need to move its awareness to a higher goal. But for those who have the ability to survive without expending all of one's energies to do so, there is the luxury, shall we say, of being able to pursue the finer ramifications of the focus of spiritual awareness upon goals that are more intricately delineated. Each entity has this life agenda that provides for it the opportunity of that which is most important in its overall soul pattern. Thus, those who are able to find their purpose within the illusion of supply and survival, there is the constant repetition of this opportunity. Moving to a channeling delivered on September 23rd, 1990. The question this evening has to do with the situation that many people find themselves in when they have either a disease that does not yield to any kind of healing, or perhaps they find themselves in a situation of poverty, where they seldom have enough money to meet their expenses and are always wondering where the next meal is coming from. Oftentimes people will say to such a person, if you would only remove certain blockages, allow yourself to be in a certain way, then you would have plenty of money and you'd have good health. The question this evening has to do with the possibility, is there a deeper meaning and purpose to some diseases and to some situations of poverty, where the person might have another opportunity opened by that situation rather than looking to heal or cure that particular situation of poverty or ill health? I am Quo. Greetings to this group in the love and light of the one infinite creator. Greetings and blessings and an infinity of love be with you. Let us pause for a moment with the sheer joy of sharing in your meditation and your company. I am Quo. You are most kind to have allowed us this privilege. We are most happy to be asked to share our opinions and give what insight we have found to be so on the subject of the spiritual or metaphysically correct life, necessarily being reflected in perfect physical health of the physical body complex, which is the vehicle for such a mentally, emotionally, and spiritually whole and healthy individual. You notice that we segregated the body, that is your physical vehicle, your personal animal, which has sacrificed its instinct instinctual life in order that it may house the self-conscious spirit that each of you is. It is not that there is not within the illusion a tie that cannot be broken and have the physical vehicle sustain life. It is simply that who you are is not that which you see in the mirror. Who you are is not that which loved ones, friends, and enemies recognize as you. Your animal, having done its very best on your behalf, will surely die. And this is part of the necessary function of this vehicle, for your spirit has a great deal further to go than your physical vehicle can take you. You are beings finishing the evolution of your physical being, continuing your mental and emotional evolution, and either continuing or just recognizing and just beginning your evolution in spirit. Paradoxically, this does not make you as you are less than one unique entity. However, it is well to gaze at the mechanical arrangement of body and spirit. Much has already been said concerning the difference between mind and brain, and we will not belabor that point, but say only that in addition to the brain of a body and the mind of the mental complex, there is a wisdom of the spiritual complex. Like the spiritual complex itself, it is not relative. It is absolute. It is that which is most deeply hidden within each of you, the true wisdom of spirit, the true compassion of spirit. A great deal of patience, purity, and persistence is required that spirit may awaken within you and become what it always has been without the knowledge of the conscious mind, that being your true, absolute, and perfect self. As all things are one, so do all things in spirit occur perfectly, simultaneously, and with joy. This includes any condition whatsoever. Now let us take these three parts of the unity of your being and artificially separate them, that we may gaze upon them separately. For there is no one answer to the question of healings occurring in body because they have occurred in mind or spirit. The body is an entity of instinct and reason. In the early stages, it was called the tool-making animal. It, in and of itself, has a body wisdom. If, in the opinion of the wisdom of your own body, you have done harm to it, it will react to protect itself. Thusly, those who abuse their bodies in one way or another, and this is usually done because of an underactivation or overactivation of some point of energy entrance, the body will react by causing a necessity for the body to heal. Thus you may see those who press themselves against the limits of substances which are harmful to the body becoming ill, because they need, in a simply bodily way, a rest. If there is that in the nature which is somewhat sensitive, the body can be put in many situations, one of which occurs to this instrument as malaria during the building of the Panama Canal. These illnesses are examples of illnesses which have to do with the bodily complex for the most part, although it is always true that the mind can control the body to the point of which the mind is capable. Thus, the first kind of illness has absolutely nothing to do with anything but circumstance. As you gaze at the mental-emotional complex, we see that portion of the belief you have mentioned, that is, that the body is acting out the illness which is emotional or mental. Your people, and we speak of those who are technologically advanced, have used the technology not to free themselves from labor, but to become ever more enslaved by it. Light, which was to give leisure to the people of your planet, has been used to extend artificially daylight. Your particular physical vehicle is not designed to be a night hunter. Its diurnal rhythm is to wake with the sun and sleep with the darkness. When asked, this remarkable adaptable body will do its very, very best to support alternative diurnal cycles, but it is at its weakest when the schedule is not steady. That is, when there is no set time of being awake or of being asleep. This is very confusing to an animal which turns to the sun instinctively and which controls its environment for its survival. Consequently, unless an entity has thought deeply about such a simple thing as attempting to remain upon a schedule of sleeping and awaking, an entity can induce a high degree of stress while seemingly not overworking nor giving oneself enough time to rest. There are many other stresses through which one may put the body because of concern of an overactive imagination of a personality that swings in its attitudes and needs to a greater extent than is comfortably handled by the physical vehicle. Thusly, it is quite obvious that in many cases, the mind is the parent of the illness, and the illness is the acting out of that which was refused as catalyst by the mental emotional complex of the self. There is the cancer of the anger that grows upon itself. There are the lung diseases of those who have not said the words that they must say to be healthy, have not told the truths they must be told to be free of misunderstanding at a deep level in relationships. There is the acidic condition brought about by sheer overwork, which ruins your gastrointestinal tracts. Many are the illnesses that are the outworking of mental imbalance or emotional imbalance. We do not use the word unhappiness because we, in our experience, have not found that concept helpful. Joy, not happiness, is a spiritual concept. Because the mind and body are so closely linked in many diseases, they are indeed responsive to love. You may name any emotional or mental complex distortion that has caused illness that you wish, and we say to you that is love, poorly expressed, but the mind is not closed and consciousness is creative as you allow it to be. Consequently, those who undertake in healing the will to health and a faith that which has been caused by their mind's concerns can certainly be turned around, will indeed respond to positive suggestions. Indeed, the habit of saying anything whatsoever about the self or others that is judgmental is a harmful and unhealthful thing to do, both metaphysically and physically. This is a large category. Many entities can and are healed because of a change in attitude, of a renewed passion for life, of the solving of the anguish which brought about the illness, the forgiving of the self, and the proper attention to those things which this animal that has been so good to you may need that you are not giving it. You make sure that your pets have food that will give them what they need. Each entity is unique in that respect also, and it is only common sense to eat those things you feel are either good to eat, or in the case of those who have so many allergies, they cannot find foods to which they are not allergic, those to which they are least sensitive. The third category is one of spirit, and the cause of many entities neglecting this portion of the characteristics of healing is that they think of the spirit as that which is the same relativistic configuration with regard to this illusion as the mind emotional complex and the body complex. Such entities, though spiritual, have not grasped that each entity is absolute. What you see and hear and taste and touch will die. What you are, if you think of yourself as your body, will die. All illness is healed by the entrance into larger life, if it be done in a natural manner, that is, if one lets nature use its wisdom and spirit, its decision-making ability. It is not only those who have come to this planet to help with the harvest that have, with the aid of the greater self, which is love. The one great original thought planned the difficulties and limitations as subjectively perceived by the entity within the incarnation. These have been set forth for a reason. Most of the entities upon this planet are capable of graduation from this density to the next are capable, if they wish to make difficult choices of learning the last lessons of unconditional love that they can learn while in this illusion. They've had their part. You have had your part in planning just those things you may bewail the most, because if you consider it carefully, you'll see that your intense periods of learning have so often coincided with intense periods of discomfort, anguish, and pain. It is not altogether false that an artist suffers, and from his suffering makes beauty, for that is the way of the spirit. The goal of spirit is not happiness, for that suggests a static, unmoving self, comfortable and unchanging. Evolution suggests continual change, continual new learning, and continual dropping off of that which is no longer helpful in this process of spiritual evolution. Thus, in order to distract them or in some way focus them away from the mundane and everyday world, many entities choose to incarnate with illnesses, diseases, and unhealthful situations of mind also that are deemed necessary by the self and the greater self, in order to give to the pilgrim the best possible chance of learning the lessons, of having the realizations and the transformations occur that you yourself felt were needed. Consequently, If repeated and earnest attempts are made in a single-minded and careful manner, and poverty does not open to riches or ill health to hardiness, it is then that one must look at one situation. The first realization is that this is a relativistic illusion. For instance, each in this circle is unwealthy. One, extremely unwealthy, others closer to being comfortable and without worry, but not close enough to avoid difficulty when unexpected expenses occur. Why would we and you sometimes choose such situations? What have they to teach us? In a relativistic world, a simple geographical move to any of your civilizations that contains a large majority of people who do not have enough to eat or a place to sleep will indicate that even those in this culture that consider themselves the poorest are seen as rich by those who have even less. To one who is dying, an illness that does not kill does not seem serious. To one who has a non-killing disease, but one which limits, those who are able to move around without limitations seem healthy. When pre-incarnative choice has given to you a difficulty, have faith that you are a spirit advanced enough to participate in your own destiny. That occurrences do not simply happen by chance, that the seeming poverty, the seeming limitation, the seeming difficulty, the seeming illness is also a forthright aid in setting up a circumstance in which a lesson of love can be learned under adverse conditions. Yours is the last density with truly adverse conditions for the positive or service to others oriented person. Only in this density, the density of choice, does this occur. Know then that which is in front of you is not more than you can work with, is not that which defeats. You would not program that for yourself. But you are stretching yourself because you wish to change. You wish to become even more polarized in love and service to the Creator and others than you are now. There may be a lesson to learn. There may be a part of service that you choose that could not be achieved in any other way, given the uniqueness of your person, the uniqueness of your character. Consequently, there are illnesses, limitations, and what seems to be a grinding and degrading poverty that may be seen only in a spiritual sense as challenges rather than difficulties, as chances to learn rather than sentences of condemnation. It is well, when one is gazing within at one situation, to consider all three possibilities. First, give the body what it is asking for. If you are still ill, if you have worked hard and are still poor, offer to the mind the opportunity of thinking carefully about the possibility of healing of this sorrow of self by a change in attitude, a change in the way you treat the body that has been so good to you. And if these things are tried in all sincerity, persistently, and yield nothing, try the assumption that this situation, though seemingly negative, within the illusion is the very cornerstone of your evolution in spirit. The lesson there will be learned during the suffering, the pain, the anguish of learning and change, and the transformation of the self. Can it possibly feel good for the felled tree trunk to be hollowed out? Yet, if it is not hollowed out, it cannot be the canoe. It cannot carry anyone anywhere. So, too, are lessons unique. You seek in yourself a hollowing out of those petty concerns that you cannot afford if you wish to be open to spiritual evolution. Certainly, do all that you can to maximize the use of the vehicle that you have. But gaze beyond that. If you are a player of a violin and you begin to get fingers that are numb, a doctor will say to you that you are holding the instrument incorrectly and are causing some nerve condition. Pills and treatments will ensue. If that does not cure the difficulties of the hand, gaze within and see if the mind enjoys what it is doing. If it does, and affirm so in a persistent manner, and there is still the pain when playing the instrument, the situation may well be pre-incarnatively chosen in order that your path of service may be changed to another direction, another impetus, perhaps one better served to the deeper gifts of your unique self. In any case whatsoever, release all fear of the illness or the limitation, fear of the stigma this may bring upon you, fear of what others may say as they misunderstand you. All of these things are as nothing to one who is paying attention to that source of information that is by far the most reliable. That is the self. As always, daily persistent meditation acting upon those new points of view that this meditation inevitably brings, and praising and thanking the Infinite One for this opportunity to break the walls of previous misunderstandings within yourself, no matter how small. Here's your opportunity to gaze steadily at the illusion until it blinks. Do not accept any negative explanation or condemnation. Take it not in. You are engaged in walking a path of spirit, the mind and body in complete cooperation from before the beginning of this incarnation. You chose the physical vehicle you now have. You chose pre-existing, usually genetically caused in the eyes of the world, physical vehicles that may seem, in the case of pre-incarnative choices, which are challenging, that your body has betrayed you. This is never so. The body that you have is second density. It will do anything it can for you. It loves you. It accepted you. It wishes to do what you wish it to do. Sometimes it cannot because you chose this situation at this time. You will move from these words to the many other situations that are criticized as being those of failure of some kind. Take them to heart and have courage and faith, and the will to learn that which you came here to learn, the will to love ever more purely, the will to allow the pettiness of humanity gradually to depart from you as water from a pitcher, that you are an empty vessel at last for the love and the light of the one infinite Creator, as expressed through the gifts manifested by you in greater and greater understanding of the true goals of this life of choice. At this time, we would, with some embarrassment, apologize for speaking longer than the 30 minutes this instrument requested of us. Unfortunately, neither this instrument nor us understands time very well. We leave this instrument in love and light and transfer to the one known as Jim. Carla then asks, quote, I find myself in a situation where physically I am completely disabled. Mentally, I'm adequate. Spiritually, I'm an emotional slob. I was having a conversation with the instrument this afternoon in which I was discussing being rather than doing. This, I feel, is when I was sidelined because it is for me to be that I means have a channel. Yet at this exact moment of time, in the illusion I'm feeling more and more to do. I like doing things. In fact, thrills me to do useful things. Although I'm an invalid, even the instrument who has a viewpoint felt I could not do anything. If there is one person left who asked me for help, I would never be able to ignore a request for help. This means, and I do accept the entity, I'm confused. Can one be and do? Or need there be set aside a time for experientially feeling the nakedness of being with no props, no one moving, nothing to distract the self from meditation? Which of these two options is more appropriate? Any comments you make at this point would be helpful. I'm Quo, and we feel that we have grasped your query, my sister. You have two desires: to be without adornment and to be helpful to others. One concerns, it would seem, only the self. The other concerns, it would seem, only others. It is true that your nature is of that kind which seeks to give where there is need and seeks little in return. If anything is sought for such actions on one level of understanding, it could be said that a choice must be made for one desire to be fulfilled and the other to be dropped. However, rather than dwell upon this more shallow interpretation of your question, we would suggest that what you seek in the heart of your being is how to be in the presence of the one Creator in all your life experience. This, of course, is a product of the attitude, the motivation, the initial impulse for all that occurs in your life pattern. Thus, we do not see the query as one which needs to make a choice between being and doing, but that which seeks an attitude of being filled with the presence of the one Creator, so that the moment is sufficient unto itself, and that as you exist in that moment that is ever present, that which is appropriate for you to be or do will present itself to you without question. This attitude is that gift of grace which all seekers seek and revere, yet achieve not so much by ritual, by action, by prayer, or by any activity. It is rather that which is born in its own time through the persistent exercise of desire to know the truth. This path of the pilgrim is the path which all walk. There is much effort expended physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually as the table prepared for the guest of great honor. No one knows when the guest shall walk through one's door. Thus it is well to be prepared at all times as best as one can be. We have no clear-cut answer for you, my sister, but offer these words in hope they show you a small light upon your journey, upon which you may focus your attention, in the hope that light shall grow in brightness and in strength to illuminate ever more clearly and carefully the placement of the next step upon this path. I have a question I'm curious about because it hasn't happened to me exactly. I was always so poor that somehow I only had a half jar of peanut butter to eat. Why do people choose the experience of poverty? I am Quo and am aware of your query, my sister. The choices that lead an entity into that situation which you call the deprivation, the poverty, the starving. Indeed, that which is disease and starving among your peoples of your planet is a placing, if we may use a phrase, of the nose to the grindstone in a fashion which cannot help but gain the attention. It is a situation in which many entities find themselves at this time, when life is tenuous and of such difficulty that one is always forced to attend to basic needs, and there is also the opportunity to discover basic principles of either that which you call service to others or service to self. Deprivation upon all levels on which it occurs is that catalyst which forces the attention and the decision-making process to choose each moment of your existence, how one will be, how one shall respond. The nature of the entity is signed with each choice. Thus, this looking into the mirror is as basic in its brutal honesty as it is possible to achieve within your third density illusion, that illusion which is already so full of catalysts for all that inhabit it. Trauma teaches, oh so well, for it does not allow the attention to waver. Question: if I took an AIDS patient into my home and my heart and gave the patient the love which I have in such abundance, could that love heal? I am Quo and am aware of your query, my sister. Love freely given always helps to heal any wound. However, that entity which is in need of the healing is the one which must accept, seek and accept love in its own life pattern, and that love which it seeks is the love given from self to self. We speak of the entity that has put itself in a situation from which it may only escape when it unlocks its door. Efforts of others await as resources, but may be allowed through that door when the entity opens the door. The riddle of the key is the riddle that each must answer. Each entity has doors and walls built by its own hands. Life is given as the opportunity to open doors, to open windows, to move through these doors, to see light through windows. Thus, though one may wish to give all one has to another, the success of the giving will depend upon the other. Is there any further query? No, I am truly done, and I want to thank you. I am Quo, and we thank you once again, my sister. Is there another query at this time? I have none this evening. In that case, it seems that we have found that for which we have been not so diligently seeking the end of our speaking. We enjoy greatly this opportunity to speak with you. If you had not guessed as much, and we thank you for being patient with our many words and with our growing sense of humor, we hope through this instrument, at this time, we shall take our leave of this instrument and this group, leaving each, as always, in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. We are known to you as those of Quo. Adonai, my friends. Adonai. So these two channelings are a little bit different. The first one really does focus on that question of money and striving for money and its nature in third density and how it guides us. The key point to remember here is that Quo relates money to energy. When the term energy is used, it helps you to understand money more readily. There's an infinite amount of energy in the universe available, so when you hoard it, it doesn't need to be hoarded. It expresses its nature and its potentiation. We all need energy to survive and be comfortable, and this energy may be transmuted by those that see the spectrum of energies so that many things can become money. It's the energetic element of money that you need to focus on. If you are seeking out that energy to have power or to control others, then that is when it becomes a spiritual roadblock. But we can all naturally use and transmute energy at all times. They also emphasize the temporal nature of energy and money, being that we make enough now, everything's okay, but there's that little part of our minds that's worried about the future. Don't know if I'm going to have enough to pay for that house or pay for that car. We worry, we fear. Our motivations about money, if they're qualified around fear, end up changing us spiritually. The question is, can there be too much energy, money, or power? Where is it stored? How is it used? Each situation is going to be a little bit different, but money is related to this understanding of fear, and the use of money will teach us along the path to seek, as they exclaim earlier in that channeling. When we're seeking money and we have a desire for money, it inspires us to learn spiritually. It did me. When I didn't have enough money, I started to go into my mind and question how I was using my mind to create the environment around me, which naturally leads to questions of spirituality, because you start asking questions about God and creation. And so the beginning point of desire, I need to make enough money to survive, to let go of this fear, can be a catalyst to guide us on our spiritual path. The only point where you need to analyze it is your concerns irrational. As they point out, people can have all the money in the world and they're still guided by some level of fear. That's the thing we want to avoid. Once we tune into the ever-present moment and the abundance of all, knowing that God is our source and supply, and that we are that God, and that all is taken care of, we can let go of those fears. And that's hard for me to do. I know I got to pay off this credit card, or I got to pay off this loan, or have enough money to do this thing. Prices are rising. I don't have time to worry about this stuff. But if you just accept that it will always be there for you when you need it, properly applying the things that I've taught you, then you can let go of that irrational fear of the future. You don't need the money just to have the money. For love of money's sake is the major concern. The money is just energy that can allow you to seek even further upon the spiritual path. The second channeling really focuses on the nature of the mind and the spiritual process, and what we can learn from things that happen, such as poverty or bad health. And they're all lessons. We sometimes, for pre-incarnative purposes, put ourselves in situations in which there is going to be disease or poverty because it teaches us things. There's a riddle in this, and if you're experiencing things and it feels like you can't ever overcome it, this striving you may have created for yourself as a spiritual roadblock on purpose to give you some spiritual lesson along this path. Why would I do that? Why would I make myself sick or poor and choose to do those things coming into this life? It's an unusual question, but it has inspired me. My road to overcome poverty and sickness and addictions has led me to this path where I'm speaking to you now. It's given me a window to see what I can do, to understand my own talents, to help to be of service to others. I would not be sitting talking to you if I didn't have those things come up earlier in my life. So we have all these complicated things happening to us, and sometimes it feels unfair. It feels that we can't solve or deal with these things. But just remind yourself, you may be encountering this for a reason. What is that reason? And if you ask those questions, you may be given some deep spiritual answers that will propel you on your path. The overcoming of these things can be what is needed for you to learn the lessons of how to overcome bad health or poverty. All of that is available to you. So release all fear. The fear of illness, the fear of limitation, or fear of poverty. Release it. When I say that to you, I'm saying that to myself. It appears to be a never-ending process, but we learn as we move along, and we continually remind ourselves that we chose this life, and we don't make ourselves sick from this fear. And they do say the goal of spirit is not happiness, because that's static and unmoving and comfortable, and you don't evolve. You sit in total happiness, then you're not going to evolve. If you've reached a point where you can continue evolving even in a state of happiness, then your soul's going to be like, finally, I don't have to prod you and poke you to get moving. So if you're experiencing these illnesses, diseases, or lack states, you can overcome them. You can open the door to the love that will heal you. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.